change his plan. Now, instead of marching along the Mediterranean coast to Rome, Hannibal's attack will come from the north, through the Alps.
The reason why Hannibal came by land, through Spain and over the Alps, was not because it was a great strategic choice. It was, in fact, a route that was forced upon him by, essentially, Roman events, by the situation he confronted at the time.
Hannibal reaches the Alps in autumn of 218 BC. At this altitude, he and his 50,000 soldiers face freezing temperatures and treacherous ice on a narrow, rocky terrain. The men are hungry, their supplies are limited, and he's leading more than just infantry. He's also leading 9,000 cavalry and 37 elephants.
All the major armies had a few elephants in them. When the Greeks fought Carthage in one of their little skirmishes, the Carthaginians used to have chariots, and they were driven from the battlefield by the elephants, at which point they said, let's get rid of the chariots and replace them with elephants. And so as a consequence, by the time of the Punic War, Carthage has, in her home, just in her home base, she has 300 trained elephants living in the walls of the city of Carthage. So that's how you get the elephant introduced in warfare.
The crossing of the Alps with such a large force is a difficult military feat. For Hannibal and his army, it has horrific consequences.
Men freeze, men starve. At one point, a landslide completely blocks their way. It's absolutely hellish. Supplies are even running low, and they're not even to the most difficult part of the crossing yet.
Well, they happen upon this Gallic village, where the Gauls offer provisions and supplies. Hannibal accepts the help, but he definitely is suspicious of their motives, because he knows that sometimes the Gauls are friendly and sometimes they are not.
Hannibal doesn't fully trust the Gauls, but eventually accepts their help. The Gauls direct Hannibal to a narrow pass which leads to a gorge.
Hannibal's original suspicions were right on. The guides suddenly bolt.
It's a trap.
Hannibal encounters different tribes throughout his campaign. They were mainly Gauls. This is a tribal people who lived in what's now modern-day France. They're not a unified people and usually don't ally themselves against a common enemy. So sometimes they'll join his war on Rome, and other times they'll attack him.
In this case, the Gauls are out for blood. The gorge turns into a gauntlet of death.
Gauls block both ends of the gorge, but Hannibal's troops fight their way out, leaving the butchered enemy in their wake. After some 30 grueling days, Hannibal and his men emerge from the Alps. When they finally arrive on the northern plains of Italy, nearly a third of Hannibal's army has perished.
They lose about 18,000 infantry, about a third of the cavalry, which would be maybe 4,000 horse, you know, you arrive with, say, 27 elephants, you lose a third of the elephants.
But Hannibal has always known the crossing would be costly. From the very beginning of the war, he's had a plan to replenish his forces, a plan that relied on his elephants.
Part of Hannibal's strategy in crossing the Alps was that he understood that he didn't have enough manpower to fight the Romans. Therefore, he would have to acquire it once he got into Italy. How was he going to do that? He was going to do that by attracting to his standard the Gauls, the Celts and Gauls, who hated the Romans because they've been fighting one another for 500 years, and hopefully as well get some Roman allied states to defect. So the reason for bringing the 37 elephants over the Alps was really to impress, in a political sense, both the Gauls and the allied states that this was a serious army.
Hannibal's elephants thunder into northern Italy. They successfully lure Gallic tribes to the Carthaginian side. By November 218 BC, Hannibal's numbers swell to nearly 40,000. Rome answers with 40,000 of its own soldiers to face Hannibal's threat. Both armies are now on a collision course that will rock the ancient world and rewrite military history.
The armies of Carthage and Rome couldn't be more different. Hannibal's men are mercenary soldiers from all over the map.
Hannibal's army is from different parts of the region, many of them mercenaries, drawn to his legendary leadership in battle. The light infantry are from Libya. These men carry a small round shield and fight with a small sword or javelin.